Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're looking at something I think a lot of you guys out there struggle with,
Oh, yeah.
and that's making English learning
Right.
a part of your daily life.
Absolutely.
Just making it a regular habit.
Mm-hmm.
And our source for this is an episode of the really popular podcast, English Vibes, Conversations to Improve Your English,
Oh, yeah. Jake and Hazel.
hosted by Jake and Hazel.
Yeah,
Exactly.
love those guys.
And they had some really practical advice in this episode for incorporating learning into your daily routine. Especially if you're looking for those manageable steps
Right.
that lead to long-term motivation.
Yeah, because who isn't looking for that?
Exactly.
It's so easy to feel like, ugh, this is too much, or I don't have enough time,
Yeah, you get discouraged.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think they do a really good job of breaking that down and making it feel achievable.
Yeah, you know what I really liked about their approach is that they kind of debunk this myth that you need like huge chunks of time
Right.
to learn effectively.
They're really big on this idea of what they call micro-learning.
Yeah, and starting small,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
So instead of like cramming tons of vocabulary,
Right.
they suggest just focusing on like 3 to 5 new words each day,
Exactly.
which seems really doable.
It does. And it might not seem like a lot, but think about the compounding effect.
Okay.
It's like putting those tiny little daily deposits into your savings account
Uh-huh.
that eventually, end up growing into this substantial sum.
I love that analogy.
So if you stick with it, those 3 words a day
Right?
add up to almost 1,000 new words
Wow.
by the end of the year.
That's incredible.
It's like a sneaky way to make significant progress without feeling overwhelmed.
Totally. And I love how, that ties in perfectly with their tip about connecting new words to your daily routine.
Yes.
They talk about like, incorporating those new words or phrases into your everyday activities. Like I was trying to learn how to say dishwasher in Italian.
And so every time I loaded the dishwasher or unloaded the dishwasher,
Right.
I would say it out loud to myself
Perfect.
in Italian.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you're building that mental muscle memory.
It's fascinating how they tap into that science of habit formation,
Yes.
when you attach new information to something you already do regularly, like brushing your teeth
Right.
or, making coffee in the morning.
Exactly.
It becomes so much more likely to stick.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like that saying, repetition is the mother of learning or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are some of their other suggestions for making those repetitions stick?
Well, they are both big believers in actively tracking your progress.
Okay.
So they suggest, using a notebook or a language learning app or even like a simple spreadsheet
Oh, that's a good idea.
to record those new words and phrases.
Yeah, because it's almost like creating that visual roadmap
Precisely.
of your language journey, isn't it?
There's something so powerful about seeing your progress laid out in front of you. Totally. And, it becomes this tangible reminder of how far you've come.
Yes.
And that can be incredibly motivating, especially on those days when you feel like you're not making any headway.
Oh, for sure. I hit plateaus all the time.
Absolutely, we all do. It's part of the process.
Yeah, it's totally normal.
Yeah. So having that visual reminder can be a game changer.
So we've got kind of our foundations, right?
Yeah.
Starting small,
Yes.
building those micro-learning habits,
Mhm.
and tracking that progress.
Of it.
But how do we start immersing ourselves in the language?
Well, that's where Jake and Hazel get really excited about the power of passive listening.
Okay.
So think YouTube videos,
Mhm.
TV shows,
Okay.
even podcasts like the one we're talking about right now.
So it's not just about active studying, with test books and flashcards.
Right.
It's about surrounding yourself with the sounds of English
Yeah.
in a more relaxed way.
Exactly. It's like soaking up the rhythm and flow of the language
Uh-huh.
without even realizing you're learning.
I can see that.
And it's particularly helpful for picking up those informal expressions
Right.
and colloquialisms.
Like slang and stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
The kind of stuff that textbooks often miss.
Yeah, they do.
So it's like, when you learn a new song,
Uh-huh.
by just listening to it over and over again,
Right.
you start to pick up the lyrics and the melody without even trying.
I can see that, yeah.
And it's the same with language when you're listening to native speakers.
Okay.
They're unconsciously tuning into their pronunciation,
Okay.
their intonation,
Right.
even those subtle nuances that give the language its character.
So where do they suggest we start?
Well, for starters, they're big fans of TED Talks.
Okay.
They love the diversity of accents and topics
Oh, yeah. TED Talks are great.
you can find there. And for something a little more lighthearted,
Okay.
They recommend the classic sitcom Friends.
Oh, Friends is classic, yeah.
For its everyday English and, humorous dialogues.
I feel like everyone I've ever met who's learned English has learned it by watching Friends.
Right. It's such a popular choice, and for good reason.
I wonder if that show will ever get old.
I don't know. It's kind of timeless in a way.
So I think those are great suggestions. TED Talks, Friends. Have you found any shows or videos that have been particularly helpful for you?
I think the key is to choose something that you genuinely enjoy.
Oh, for sure.
So if you love documentaries, find a series in English.
Right.
If you're into comedy, seek out English-speaking stand-up comedians.
Okay.
The more you enjoy the content, the more naturally you'll absorb the language.
Totally. And it makes it so much more sustainable too, right?
Absolutely.
Because if you're not enjoying it,
Yeah,
you're going to give up.
it's true.
And I love that, that ties in so nicely with your next tip,
Oh, yeah.
which is about finding opportunities to actually speak English.
Right.
Even if you don't have
You've seen a
natives
speaker.
around you all the time.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't.
They don't.
So we've covered listening,
Okay.
but what about speaking? Yes. That's often the biggest hurdle for language learners,
It is.
especially if they don't have regular opportunities to practice with others.
Right.
And that's where Jake and Hazel offer the suggestion.
Okay.
That might seem a little unorthodox at first,
Okay. I'm intrigued.
talking to yourself in English.
Okay.
Have you ever tried that?
I have, and I gotta admit, it felt really weird at first.
It does feel a little strange.
But, I mean, they swear by it, so...
They do, and it's actually quite clever when you think about it.
Okay.
Because when you talk to yourself, you're taking the pressure off.
That's true.
You're not worried about making mistakes in
Right.
front of others.
Yeah.
So you're more likely to experiment with new vocabulary,
Okay.
new grammar structures.
It's like a safe space to practice.
Like a mental rehearsal
I love that mental rehearsal.
for real life conversations.
Yes, and they emphasize it's not about being perfect at this stage.
Okay.
It's simply about getting those words out of your mouth.
And feeling more comfortable with the act of speaking.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got talking to ourselves covered.
Check.
What are some other ways they suggest that we get in that speaking practice?
Well, they both recommend actively seeking out speaking partners.
Okay.
So this could be a friend or a family member
Mm-hmm.
who's also learning English.
Okay.
Or you could explore language exchange apps,
Oh, yeah, those are great.
which are fantastic.
Because you can, connect with people
Mhm.
from all over the world
Yeah.
who are learning your native language.
Exactly.
So it's a great way to make new friends.
Yes.
Learn about different cultures.
Absolutely.
And get that crucial speaking practice.
And what's great is that a lot of these apps offer features
Okay.
like text chat, voice calls, and even video chat.
So you can really practice.
You practice different aspects of communication.
It's all about, finding those opportunities
Yeah.
to use the language in real life context,
Exactly.
even if it's virtual.
Even if it's virtual for now.
Now, while speaking is, super crucial,
Right.
Jake and Hazel also dedicated a good chunk of their episode to pronunciation.
Yeah.
Oh, pronunciation. That tricky aspect of language learning.
It can be so tricky.
That can sometimes feel like a never-ending battle.
It really can.
What are their thoughts on tackling these pronunciation challenges?
Well, their biggest tip is surprisingly simple.
Okay.
Read aloud in English.
Oh,
Anything, a book, an article, even just a social media post.
okay.
The act of reading aloud forces you to pay attention to how those words are actually formed
Right.
and to engage your vocal muscles.
And that's a good way to practice fluency and rhythm at the same time.
Exactly. Plus, when you're reading aloud, you're also reinforcing your understanding of grammar and sentence structure.
Interesting.
You're essentially seeing the language in action.
Okay, I like
Yeah,
this.
it's a really powerful technique.
They also suggest recording yourself reading aloud,
Yes.
which I have to admit I used to be really self-conscious about.
I know it can feel a little awkward.
But it's so helpful
It is.
for pinpointing, those areas where you might need a little extra practice.
Absolutely.
Have you ever tried that?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Does it help?
It's so helpful.
Because you can hear yourself,
you can hear yourself, and you can also go back and listen again.
right? And compare.
So see how you're progressing.
And it's not about, trying to sound exactly like a native speaker,
Right.
which actually they emphasize that, don't they?
They do.
They say that having an accent is perfectly fine.
Absolutely.
The goal is to be clear and understandable,
Yes.
not to erase your unique way of speaking.
And I think that's such a refreshing perspective.
It is.
They really focus on the communicative aspect rather than obsessing over achieving some kind of perfect accent.
Right. And It's important to remember that everyone has an accent,
That's so true.
even native English speakers.
Exactly. Everyone.
Yeah, it's just part of what makes our voices unique. And, speaking of embracing imperfections,
Yeah.
Jake and Hazel have some really valuable insights about dealing with the inevitable, making mistakes.
We all do it.
Yes.
We all do. It's part of the process.
Oh, the dreaded mistakes.
Right.
Everyone's least favorite part of language learning.
Well, maybe we can change that
Okay.
because they have a really interesting take on it.
Okay, I'm ready.
So instead of seeing mistakes as failures,
Okay.
they encourage listeners to view them as valuable learning opportunities.
Oh.
They even recommend keeping a mistake journal.
Ooh, I like that.
So instead of just cringing and moving on,
Right.
you actually write it down.
Oh.
Try to figure out why you made that mistake.
It's like turning those errors
Yes.
into little nuggets of wisdom.
Exactly.
So you can learn from them.
And as you track those mistakes,
Right.
you'll likely start to notice patterns.
Okay.
Maybe you keep mixing up the same two verbs,
Oh,
or you consistently forget to use articles.
Okay.
So by identifying those patterns, right.
You can then focus your practice on those specific areas.
So it's like having a personalized roadmap for improvement.
It is.
I love that.
It's like your own personal language coach.
Yeah, it's like being your own detective almost.
Exactly. Figuring out those little mysteries.
But even with the best of intentions,
Right.
language learning can be a roller coaster.
It can be a real roller coaster.
There are ups and downs and plateaus, and
Absolutely.
you get discouraged sometimes. So
Yeah, motivation can definitely ebb and flow,
it can.
especially when those plateaus hit.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
What do they suggest for navigating those more challenging times?
Well, one of their biggest pieces of advice is to set small, achievable goals.
Okay.
So don't try to do everything at once.
Right.
Break down your learning into smaller, more manageable chunks,
Okay.
and then, focus on mastering one thing at a time.
So it's like those micro-learning habits we talked about,
Exactly.
but applying it to goals.
Yes, and it could be anything,
It could be like mastering a particular grammar point
Yeah.
or learning a set of vocabulary words.
Gotcha.
Whatever feels achievable and meaningful for you.
And then don't forget to celebrate those milestones.
Yes, celebrate those wins no matter how small.
Yeah, like finishing a chapter in a textbook.
Exactly.
Or having your first conversation with a native speaker.
Yes.
Or even just like finally understanding the lyrics to your favorite English song.
That's a big one.
It is, right?
I mean, music can be such a powerful tool for language learning.
Yeah, and it's so motivating too.
Absolutely.
So I think acknowledging and rewarding yourself for those achievements,
Yes.
no matter how small they may seem, can make a world of difference in keeping you motivated.
It really can. It's all about that positive reinforcement.
Okay, positive reinforcement, got it.
And speaking of positivity,
Okay.
one of their most powerful pieces of advice, I think, is about finding joy in the learning process.
Oh, for sure.
It's not about, forcing yourself to study for hours on end
Right.
or memorizing endless lists of vocabulary words.
No one wants to do that.
It's about making learning an enjoyable part of your life.
Yeah, I love how they keep coming back to that idea of making it fun.
Because, let's face it, if you're not enjoying the process,
You're not going to do it.
you're much less likely to stick with it.
Yeah, exactly. And, that looks different for everyone.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's watching your favorite TV show in English.
Right.
Or listening to music while you cook dinner.
That's a good one.
Or even just chatting with a friend online.
Yeah. The possibilities are endless.
As long as you're enjoying it.
Exactly. It's all about finding those moments of connection and enjoyment
Right.
that keep you coming back for more.
That's what makes it sustainable.
It is. It's about turning language learning into something that adds value to your life.
I like that.
Not something that feels like a chore or an obligation.
Right.
It should be something that you look forward to.
As we're wrapping up this first part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I keep thinking back to that final question that Jake and Hazel posed to their listeners,
Oh, yeah?
which I think is an excellent one for us to consider as well.
I'm intrigued. What is it?
They asked their listeners to think about one specific activity they enjoy
Okay.
that they could start doing in English today.
Oh, I love that.
So it's like a challenge, right?
It is a challenge.
But it's a really good one.
And it's so simple, yet so profound.
Yeah.
Because it really challenges you to personalize your learning journey,
Right.
to think about those small practical steps that you can take right now.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be something grand or time-consuming. It could be as simple as reading a news article in English,
That's a good one.
trying out an English language recipe,
I like that.
or even just switching your phone's language settings to English for a day.
Oh, that's a good challenge.
It is, right?
I might try that.
It's those little things
It is.
that can make a really big difference.
Those small shifts in perspective.
Exactly.
And those seemingly insignificant actions can actually make a huge difference over time.
So it's all about, finding those little entry points that spark your curiosity
Yes.
and keep you engaged.
That's what it's all about.
Because that's what's going to keep you coming back for more.
Exactly.
That's what will make English learning a sustainable and rewarding part of your life.
Absolutely.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Starting small.
Yes.
The power of passive listening. Finding ways to speak, even if you don't have people to speak with.
Right.
Tackling pronunciation, and, of course, making the whole process enjoyable.
The most important part.
That's what's going to keep you coming back.
Absolutely.
What really resonated with me
Yeah.
about what Jake and Hazel had to say
Okay.
is that it's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's not about achieving fluency overnight.
Nobody does that.
You don't.
It takes time.
It does.
And it's a journey.
It's about finding those small, consistent actions
Yes.
that fit into your daily life.
That you can actually stick with.
Yes. And enjoying the journey
Yes.
along the way.
The journey is the destination.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect note to end this first part of our deep dive.
I agree.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into some of the challenges and strategies
Okay.
involved in making English learning a seamless part of your life.
I can't wait.
Me too.
I think this is going to be good.
I think it is too. As we continue this deep dive into Jake and Hazel's advice, it's striking how they don't shy away from,
Yeah.
the less glamorous side of language learning.
Right. It's not all
They actually dedicate
fun and games.
a good chunk of their episode to talking about those moments,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
frustration, self-doubt, even those times when you feel like giving up.
Totally.
It's like they get it.
Yeah, it's refreshing to hear them acknowledge that, right?
Yeah.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Yep. Language learning, like any skill, has its ups and downs.
Absolutely.
What do they suggest for dealing with those bumps in the road?
Well, one of their biggest pieces of advice is to cultivate
Okay.
self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
Yeah, they remind listeners that you're not going to become fluent overnight
Right. Yeah.
and that setbacks are a natural part of the process.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others.
Oh, yeah.
Or to those unrealistic expectations we often see on social media.
All the time.
Yeah.
It's like everyone's speaking perfect English and you're like, wait a minute.
Right.
How did they get there?
And they're like 2 years old.
Exactly.
And they're like, I've been studying for 10 years.
Right. And Jake and Hazel are really good at dismantling those harmful comparisons.
Yeah.
They encourage listeners to focus on their own progress,
Okay.
however small it may seem.
Okay, so just focus on yourself.
Yeah, tune out the noise
Okay.
and celebrate those individual achievements.
I like that.
Yeah, it's about recognizing your own wins.
Are they big advocates for, finding a supportive community as well?
They are.
Oh,
They
yeah.
talk about the importance of connecting with other learners,
Okay.
whether it's through a language exchange partner
Yeah.
or a study group,
Well,
or even just online forums and communities.
oh, yeah, there are tons of those.
There are, and they can be really helpful.
Yeah.
They emphasize that sharing your experiences,
Okay.
both the challenges and the triumphs,
Mhm.
can be incredibly motivating and reassuring.
Right, because you realize that
You're not alone.
everyone goes through it.
Exactly. It's like having a cheerleading squad for your language learning adventures.
I love that.
Right there to cheer you on and pick you up when you fall.
And they also talk about the importance of mindset, right?
Yes.
Like how we frame
Yeah.
those inevitable challenges can make
Yeah.
a huge difference in how we experience the learning process.
It really can. Our thoughts can be our biggest allies or our worst enemies.
Wow, that's deep.
Right. So they're all about reframing those negative thoughts.
Okay. And focusing on the positive aspects of learning.
So instead of beating yourself up over mistakes,
Right.
see them as opportunities to learn and grow.
Exactly. Mistakes are just data points.
Okay, I like that.
They're information that helps you improve.
And then instead of feeling overwhelmed
Right.
by the sheer amount there is to learn,
Oh my gosh, yes, there's so much.
just focus on the progress you're making,
Absolutely.
even if it feels small.
Even if it's just one word a day,
Okay?
it's still progress.
I like that.
And one of their more practical tips for maintaining that positive mindset
Okay.
is to set realistic goals.
Okay. Realistic goals.
So don't try to learn everything at once.
Right?
Break down your learning into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Okay, like bite-sized pieces.
Exactly, bite-sized pieces of learning.
And then, focus on mastering one thing at a time.
Yes.
Whether it's that particular grammar point or...
Yeah, or a set of vocabulary words.
Got it.
Whatever feels achievable and meaningful for you. And then don't forget to celebrate those milestones.
Yes. Celebrate those wins no matter how small.
Like finishing a chapter in a textbook.
Exactly.
Or having your first conversation with a native speaker.
It's a big deal.
Or even just like finally understanding the lyrics to your favorite English song.
Oh, yes. Music is such a great motivator.
It is, right?
And it's so rewarding when you finally understand those lyrics.
It is.
So I think acknowledging and rewarding yourself for those achievements, no matter how small they may seem, can make a world of difference in keeping you motivated.
Okay, so positive reinforcement.
Positive reinforcement.
Celebrating those wins.
Exactly.
Got it.
And what I find so compelling about Jake and Hazel's approach is how they weave their own personal experiences into their advice.
Yeah, they're not just like...
It makes them so relatable and authentic.
Preaching from a textbook.
Exactly. They're not just, reciting rules from a grammar book.
They're sharing their own struggles.
Yeah. They're sharing their own journeys, their struggles, and their triumphs.
Yes.
Which makes their message even more powerful.
Because they've been there.
They've been there. They know what it's like to struggle with language learning.
Right. And they're saying like, hey, we've been there.
Yeah.
We know it's tough.
It's not easy.
But you can do this.
You got this.
It's like they're those wise, encouraging friends who've been down this language learning path before.
And they're there to offer guidance and support.
So we've talked about the practical tips.
Okay.
The importance of mindset.
Yeah.
The power of community. Is there anything else that really stands out to you?
I think one of their most enduring messages is their emphasis on finding joy in the learning process.
Oh, for sure.
It's not about forcing yourself to study for hours on end or memorizing endless lists of vocabulary.
Yeah.
It's about making learning an enjoyable part of your life.
Yeah, and I love how they keep coming back to that idea of making it fun.
Yeah. Because let's face it, if you're not enjoying the process, you're much less likely to stick with it.
Exactly.
And that looks different for everyone you know.
Of course.
Maybe it's watching your favorite TV show in English.
Okay.
Or listening to music while you cook dinner. Or even just chatting with a friend online.
Yeah.
It's all about finding those moments of connection and enjoyment that keep you coming back for more.
That's what makes it sustainable in the long run.
It is. It's about turning language learning into something that adds value to your life.
I like that.
Not something that feels like a chore or an obligation.
Right.
It should be something you look forward to.
So as we're wrapping up this second part of our deep dive, I keep thinking back to that final question that Jake and Hazel posed to their listeners.
Oh, yeah. The one about the one thing.
The one about finding an activity you enjoy that you could start doing in English today.
Such a powerful question.
It is, isn't it?
It really challenges you to think about how you can make English a more integrated part of your life.
It's almost like a call to action.
It is.
An invitation to take those insights we've been discussing and put them into practice right away.
And the beauty of it is it doesn't have to be something grand or time-consuming.
Right.
It could be as simple as reading a news article in English.
Okay.
Trying out an English language recipe, or even just switching your phone's language settings to English for a day.
Yeah, those little things can make a big difference.
It's all about those small shifts in perspective, those seemingly insignificant actions.
Yes.
That actually can make a huge difference over time.
It's all about finding those little entry points.
Yeah.
That spark your curiosity.
That keep you engaged.
And keep you coming back for more.
And that, I think, is the essence of Jake and Hazel's message.
Okay.
English learning doesn't have to be this daunting, overwhelming task.
Right.
It can be a fun, enriching,
Yeah.
and rewarding experience if you approach it with the right mindset.
Okay.
And find those strategies that work for you.
So find what works for you.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Well said. And that brings us to the end of part 2 of our deep dive.
Already.
I know time flies when you're having fun.
It does.
We've explored those practical tips, the mindset shifts, the importance of community, and finding joy in the learning process.
All the good stuff.
All the good stuff. Join us for part 3, where we'll wrap up our exploration of Jake and Hazel's insights.
Okay.
And leave you with some final thoughts and inspiration for your own English learning journey.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to our deep dive. We've been spending this episode talking about ways to make English learning part of your everyday life.
Yeah, it's been really interesting.
And we've been getting so much great advice from Jake and Hazel, the hosts of that English Vibes podcast.
I mean, they're like a wealth of information.
They are. They've given us a lot to think about.
They really have.
You know, as we're wrapping up this whole conversation,
Okay.
I keep coming back to that question they asked at the end of their
Well,
episode.
the one about that one specific activity?
Yes. The one about identifying an activity you enjoy
Right.
that you could start doing in English today.
Like right now?
Yeah, like what's that one thing?
It's so simple.
It is, but it's also really profound
It is.
because it cuts through all the noise.
Yeah, all the overwhelm.
It gets to the heart of making English learning sustainable.
Right. It's about finding those little entry points.
Exactly.
Those things that you already love to do.
Yes.
And just infusing them with English.
And it's a good reminder that you don't have to, like, overhaul your entire routine
No.
or dedicate hours each day to studying,
Nobody has time for that.
right? It can be as simple as, listening to a podcast while you commute
Yeah.
or watching a TED Talk on your lunch break
That's a good one.
or even just switching your phone's language settings to English for a day.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that one.
It is, right?
Like little mini immersion challenges.
It's those little things that can add up.
They do those small, consistent actions
Yeah.
can make a big difference over time.
And it's about making it enjoyable,
Right.
right? Because if it's not fun,
You're not going to do it.
you're not going to do, nobody wants to do something they don't enjoy.
Exactly. So find those things that make you smile.
Yes.
That make you laugh, that you're genuinely interested in.
Yeah, I love that idea of English learning becoming this organic part of your life.
It just flows naturally.
Yes, it just flows
On
naturally.
the things you already love.
You don't even have to think about it.
It's just there.
It's just there.
It's like magic.
It is. It's like you're not even trying,
Right, exactly.
but you're learning.
And that's when the magic happens.
It is. That's when you're actually going to make progress.
When you find that sweet spot
Yeah.
where passion and learning intersect,
Oh, that's good.
that's where the motivation soars, the progress accelerates,
Yeah.
and you start to see those tangible results.
They keep you going.
Exactly.
So as we bring this deep dive to a close,
Okay.
we want to leave you with a challenge.
I love a good challenge.
What's your one thing?
Mm.
What's that activity that you enjoy
Right.
that you could start doing in English today?
Maybe it's reading a news article from an English language source.
Or watching a movie with subtitles.
That's a classic.
Or even just like trying out a new phrase you learned
Yeah.
while you're chatting with friends.
Perfect.
The possibilities are endless.
They are.
The key is to find something that resonates with you,
Mm-hmm.
something that makes you curious
Yeah.
and excited to engage with the language.
That's what's going to keep you coming back for more.
Exactly. And that's what's going to make English learning a sustainable and rewarding part of your life.
I think that's the perfect note to end on.
I think so too. So embrace those micro-learning moments, celebrate those small victories,
Yes.
and most importantly, have fun.
Enjoy the journey.
We hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought,
Some inspiration.
some new strategies to try out.
And a renewed sense of excitement.
Remember, it's not about perfection.
Yeah.
It's about progress, consistency, and finding that joy in the process.
You got this.
Happy learning, everyone.